We are ready to discover what the 7 strategies are to activate your VIP status self. And I want you to really question yourself and ask, do I already do these things? To what degree do I do these things? And what's in my way of doing these things? The strategies that we'll present are, some of them are very, very practical, simple things that you can do. And others are going to require you to put on your thinking hat, and they're going to require you to really process some larger things. And it is going to require a behavior change. I know I've said that before, but I really mean that. It's going to require some work on your part if you really want to get different results than what you're getting right now. So let's go ahead and I'll share with you the very first strategy to activate your VIP status, and that is to clarify your mission. Whenever I talk to people and I'm coaching people, this seems to be the number one problem that gets in their way. They know that they're meant to do something. Some people have no idea what their mission is. They just know that they need to be doing something different, or they need to be doing something more. And what I advise people to do to start to clarify that mission is, first of all, ask yourself, who are you? Who are you really? What makes up you? What's valuable about you? What are the values that you have? What are your inspirations? What are you passionate about? The second thing is, well, what do you do? What is it that you do? What is it that you do beyond your job title? So I'm not talking about business analyst or HR manager or whatever your title is. What is it that you do, and what is it that you do well? And then the third question is, what value do you bring? It's interesting, whenever I ask this question, what value do you bring? There are people that get hung up on it and this is where an inner critic comes in and says, well, you shouldn't be talking about what you do well, because that's like bragging and self-promotion. But let me just tell you that if you are focused on your mission, that's not self-promotion. You are really focused on delivering something more meaningful in the world of business that people need and they're looking for, and they're waiting for you to be able to be clear on these 3 questions. Who are you? What do you do? And what value do you bring? So Amanda's going to catch us up on our second strategy. Here we go.
Our second strategy is to assess yourself through video. You all know that we live in a day and age of the selfie and doing a lot of video blogs and things of that nature. And I will tell you that I've yet to meet someone who likes to watch video of themselves or hear what their voice sounds like on a video. So this is a hard challenge for people, but I'm going to ask of you 3 things. I want you to practice your delivery. I want you to watch for patterns, and what I mean by that is patterns in your speech, as well as patterns of maybe facial expressions that you make or body language components. And then finally, to do it regularly. Constantly checking and rechecking to make sure that what you feel like you're doing and displaying is actually what's coming across are really great things that help you. And through assessing yourself with video, it's really the only way to do that. I can tell you, in the last company that I worked for, before we would hold a town hall meeting, we would always do a dry run, and I would pull my iPad out and record everyone, and no one loved it. But I can tell you that when we went on stage to actually execute on that town hall, it felt good, no one was nervous, and we were able to articulate everything that we wanted to say in the right way. Our third strategy that I want to talk to you about today is practicing the 70-30 rule of talk. Who's familiar with this one? I'm sure some of you, if you've ever done coaching or any kind of counseling or mediation, this is a rule that comes into play. The 70-30 rule of talk means that you let the other person talk for 70% of the time while you really work hard to speak for only 30% of the time. The reason that this is so important as a component of your VIP status is that people need to know that you're listening. And they need to know that you're listening by actual actions that you take. And one of the things that you can do that's really powerful in order to maintain this 70-30 rule is to take the opportunity to ask great open-ended questions. Those types of open-ended questions that you can ask that really lead the other person to open up, share what they're really thinking, are ultimately going to help you be able to craft your communications and also build a relationship on trust, because you really do understand where that other person is coming from. So when it comes to that 70-30 rule, I can tell you that's, for me personally, that's one that I struggle with. And even in my coaching engagements, I have a couple of tactics I use, and sometimes I even sit on my hands to make sure that I remind myself to not be the only one in the room talking. So keep that strategy in mind. It's a good one. And now we're going to go to Angie, who will be sharing with us our fourth strategy.
The fourth strategy is to shut down the inner critics. And I love these pictures because they tell it all. This is what happens inside of us. Whether you know it or not, we have this internal executive board that helps us to make decisions. And we may have 1, 2, or 3 inner critics that are in there stating their opinion and pulling us back from what our destiny is. And so we have to tell these inner critics to shut up. And I want to share with you what the inner critics really look like and some of the things that they tell you that are just flat out lies. It's what we call pre-existing conditions, by the way. And when I say pre-existing conditions, these are things that we've really been conditioned to believe. And so we allow these voices to come in and talk to us. Here's one. My opinion really doesn't matter. So if you're in a social setting or a business meeting and you have a thought and it's a good idea, but then you hear that voice says, now you know you shouldn't speak up, you're not going to add any significant weight or value. You know, that's an inner critic. About, oh, I don't want to interrupt. It's so rude to interrupt, but really it's that inner critic just telling you that, again, you don't have anything valuable to contribute to the conversation. I don't want to say something ridiculous. And so this is that inner critic that is focused on humiliation and tries to pull you back because you don't want to look stupid. The fifth one, I'm desperate to be heard. And so sometimes we do the opposite and we blurt things out, just like Amanda was talking about with the extroversion and needing to speak out loud. Sometimes we'll just float it out there and we wish that we could take it back. So now we want to move on to our next strategy, and that strategy is to get out of the wilderness of work. And this is a big one because most of us are probably caught up in this place. I'll just tell you 3 ways that you know that you're in the wilderness of work. And the first one is that you're just simply trying to survive. You're going to work every day, you're coming home, you're exhausted, you plop down on the couch, you really can't give much more. You can barely get supper together, and sometimes you may not even be eating supper, but you're just on this hamster wheel going round and round doing the same thing every day and not really having the life of meaning that you wish that you had. The second thing is sacrifice. You feel like you have to sacrifice. You may even trump your values sometimes. So, for example, let's say that you have a value around family, yet you find yourself staying in the office late day after day or more often than not. And you're thinking, oh, if I just do this one more activity, if I just finish out this one last task, then I will finally get seen. And I'm going to tell you that that is just a flat out lie. That is a deception from your inner critic that's getting in the way of you truly being successful. The next thing that you hear in the wilderness of work is that you're trying to prove yourself and always not being confident and comfortable in who you are and being at peace with yourself, but really just trying to prove that you're good enough. And this is something that you don't have to do. There's this guy, his name is Temptation, and Temptation is not your friend, and he's going to tell you tales, and he's just going to tell you, well, hey, if you just wander around, you're going to eventually be successful, but we know that that is not true. Just to give you an example of how this works, if you think about the children of Israel, and they wandered around in the wilderness for 40 years when they were 11 miles away from their destination. And so Temptation's goal is to keep you circling around so that you never find your VIP status. And so you've just got to make a conscious step to step out of that wilderness of work. Our sixth strategy is what we call waking up your inner CEO. And all of us have this. The inner CEO sits on your inner executive board and helps you to feel confident and to make decisions. It's a mindset. And you have to have the mindset that, hey, you are the boss of you. Nobody can make you do anything that you don't want to do. Nobody can make you feel any way that you don't want to. I remember when I was a teenager and I was angry about something, and the person across from me says, well, you know that, nobody can make you mad. You choose to be mad. And I got angry with that. It's like, well, they made me do that. But ultimately I found out that we are in control of our emotions. We can control those responses, and we can control ourselves. And we can be the boss of ourselves. Second, you have to have that mentality of you own the business. And it's a difference between renting and owning. We talk about this sometimes when Amanda and I have done in the past, we've done some workshops on accountability. You do have to have that mindset that you own this. And when you own it, you react differently to situations. The third thing that you do is you respond with focus on the challenge, not the person. I think about when I was in Iraq, and I was an HR defense contractor overseas there. When I first went on to this military base in Iraq, I was one of 16 females on that base, and it was extremely challenging, and I had a tremendous amount of opposition from my male comrades because they just didn't feel like I was supposed to be there as a woman, and this was back in 2004. And I very quickly learned that I couldn't take that personally, that I could not become an emotional wreck over that I really had to focus on solutions, the task at hand, and solving the problems as opposed to, attacking the other people, because that's not going to get you traction. And it's hard to do, but it is possible to do that. And it comes with practice and behavior change and mindset change. Another thing is that you always live in choice. Sometimes we don't want to believe this. Sometimes we want to believe that we are victims of circumstance, or that things happen to us and there's nothing that we can do about it. When really, if we sit down and think about it, we do have many choices. We can choose to walk away from a situation. We can choose to respond differently. Once you always put this in the forefront of your mind, then you know that you are starting to wake up your inner CEO and live the life of VIP status, because people who live VIP status are in control of their circumstances. And even when the curveball comes in and hits you, you have a reaction to that, and it's one where you know that you're at peace with yourself and that you are able to maneuver around circumstances instead of letting those circumstances drag you down.